And hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. With me, I have a very special guest with me. I have Jay Burke with me from the With Jay Burke show. Say hello to everyone, Jay.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
You know what, man? It's great to have you back on here. Last time we did this was for Goodwill Hunting, and now here we are doing our top five opening scenes in movies. And I've been wanting to do this segment for a while. I had got some inspiration watching some TikTokers and stuff like that, going back and forth on some of their stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'm definitely. I said now's the time to do it because I want to actually do something a little bit differently. So when you look at opening scenes, how do you judge them?
Well, that was the tough part. First of all, this was a lot of fun. Because everybody always looks at endings, right? Everybody always
Right.
thinks of the end of the movie, but the beginning is so integral. I mean, it sets everything up. So, of course, at first there's the nostalgia factor for me, but some of these that I was looking at were probably, even newer movies and stuff. So I'm like, I can't totally take that into account. And then some of the other things I was like, well, what's like the iconic factor, right? Like what's
Right.
opening scenes that everybody talks about? So I kind of looked at it that way. And then I just kind of like started going down the rabbit hole. I'm like, setting the scene or setting up the characters, setting up what type of movie it is and stuff like that. And then at some point I was like, you know what, these are the five I think I like. I just threw them out there because I started to get crazy with it.
Right, because it can be one of those things like, well, what do I put for my top five? What do I do with this one or that one?
Right.
And I had trouble with my number four. Like I kept on scribbling it
Mm,
out. I'm like, okay, I don't want to repeat anything that I've done already. I already did five scenes, best scenes ever already, and I don't want to go on ahead and rehash what I did before. But some of those actually still stuck with me for the opening scenes because some of the stuff I actually talked about for opening scenes. So
yeah.
so I didn't want to repeat myself. And there, by the way, guys, I didn't go paint by the numbers on this either. I decided to go on ahead, do a little bit differently than what most people do, and think outside the box a little bit. And yeah, you're right though, Jay. Some of this is about nostalgia factor. Some of it is about what sticks and what you keep thinking about. Like for instance, sometimes I just happen just to think about one certain opening scene to a movie or whatever,
Yeah.
and it just sticks with you, and it's just, and you're thinking about it throughout the day as well, of like if you think of a Starbucks you think of a certain movie, or if you think about something else you think of a certain quote from the opening scene of a movie as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. It's whatever, it sticks with you. But you don't think about it all the time because you just might enjoy the movie, but it sets the tone. I mean,
It
the
does.
opening is integral. It sets everything up. So,
Right,
you
it
know,
gets you going on what the plot line is, the character setup, the build
mhm.
of the world that they're trying, the rules that they're trying to get you to follow through with this, with the movie and stuff like that too. So yeah, it definitely does. But we're gonna go from five to one. So
Okay.
first off, you're gonna go on ahead and go off with your number five, and then after that bounces back over to me with my number five until we have one complete list done of our top five.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right, so I'll start with my number 5. Some of these are very interchangeable, but I put this at number 5. I chose Raiders of the Lost Ark from 1981,
Oh,
and
nice.
the reason I did that is it's not my favorite Indiana Jones movie, even though I love at least the first 3 I like a lot, but I think I think probably Temple of Doom, I wanna say that's 83, 84. Is probably the best one, but when you mention Indiana Jones, I think everybody always thinks about Indiana Jones escaping from the booby trap temple, for lack of
Yep.
a better term. That the huge boulder, it's iconic, but what I kinda like about it is it has really nothing else to do with the movie. Like, it's a MacGuffin, obviously, but it's setting the tone for what the movie's gonna be, not necessarily what they're what they're looking for, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, it's setting up who Indiana Jones is, what the story is about, and it's really just an action adventure story, and in its heart, right? And it's kind of a fun movie in a lot of ways. And yeah, I just was like, it's kind of cool that to set up the whole series was just this one scene. And I think when everybody thinks about Indiana Jones, they think about that scene.
Exactly, because here's the thing. Even though there's not much dialogue whenever it comes down to Indy taking the statue and then the ball comes down and starts chasing him through the temple. There's not really much dialogue, but you get to know the character because of the fact of his superstitions and the things that he's afraid of, and then the
Right.
booby traps. And you also know this is also going to be an action adventure, a little bit of comedy mixed in with it. So you actually get the tone right off the bat. Then you also have what the personality is like for the character. And you also know, hey, look, I'm going to be in this 110% because of the fact there's going to be booby traps in this thing. There's
Right.
going to be an adventure movie. This is going to have comedy in it. This is going to have everything that I want in an Indiana Jones movie.
Right.
And that's actually hands down one of my favorite opening scenes as well.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
think
that yeah,
it just sets the whole series up. That's why I'm like, I have to throw this on here. It sets the whole thing up.
it really does. And it almost made my list. I almost
Yeah.
had that movie on my list. I'm like, am I going too generic or am I not going too
I
generic?
know.
It pulls on the nostalgia, but I decided to go a little bit differently with my number five. I decided to go with like a 2001 movie.
Okay.
Um, and that is the movie Swordfish with John Travolta, Hugh Jackman, Holly
Oh,
Berry.
yeah.
And
Okay.
and this is what I love about it. Okay, so John Travolta is basically talking to us like as the audience, and of course he's the main villain in this. He's the big bad, who's the terrorist in this movie. But my favorite thing is he's talking about movies. He's talking about how you're only allowed one F bomb in a movie,
Mm,
and you don't see anything in the background. It's all blurred out. And then once he gets on talking to the FBI agents and stuff like that, then you realize, oh shit, this guy is actually the terrorist who's talking to us, and they acting like he's actually smarter than what we are. And the camera follows him out of Starbucks and outside in the streets into that bus that we're gonna see later on at the end of the movie. So I love how he talks to Don Cheadle. I love this whole setup of it. It almost feels like a Pulp Fiction movie, but a little bit differently with it.
yeah.
But I don't know. Every single time I see a Starbucks, I automatically think of Swordfish every single time. And I'm always picturing that John Travolta's in the back of the area, and you see nothing but coffee grinds in the very back of them advertising their coffee, and he's over there talking to the audience. But that's just me. But yeah, that's what I got for my number five.
That's a good pick and an interesting pick, and I didn't honestly, I didn't think of that one, and it's been so long since I've seen the movie, but now that I think about it, yeah, there is a little, like, Tarantino-esque kind of vibe to it, and which is funny because obviously Travolta made his huge comeback because of Tarantino and Pulp
Right.
Fiction at the time. I mean, he was down. He was pretty down in Hollywood then. I mean, he wasn't doing anything great, but yeah, and then he sustained that run pretty long time because that's 7 years later too.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a good one, actually.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Hmm.
So what's your number four though?
Alright, so for this, I actually went this is I don't know if everybody would have this, but for me, a actually, this will be an interesting one because there's kinda competing stuff. I chose the opening scene of Baby Driver,
Okay.
and
I
the
like that
reason
movie.
I really love that movie. Um, but it just did that scene is done very differently. Like that establishes um everything you want to do. It establishes the character, that music's gonna play a huge role in the movie. It's filmed very fast paced, but it's kind of fun and all over the place. But I kept I kept kinda going back when I thought of that. It just triggered something about the movie, Drive with Ryan
Mm-hmm.
Gosling in 2011, and they're almost like the same type of opening, but, like, total juxtapositions of each other. Like, Drive is very dark, and, Baby Driver, the colors pop a little bit more. The music in Baby Driver is who's that? John Spencer Blues Explosion, I think,
Yeah.
is the starter in that. Whereas Drive is just like, it's Drive is obviously not going to be a fun movie.
No, it's
It's,
definitely not fun,
yeah,
but it keeps you on the edge of your toes though, too though.
yeah. So it was funny. I almost was like, it which one has a better opening scene for like a car chase? Like for a movie that's based on a lot of car chases. They're different. They're not the stereotypical type of movies for that kind of genre. But I like
Exactly.
kind of like that they both focus on the character and kind of tell you something about the character in just very in polar opposite ways. But I went with Baby Driver just because the movie's a little more fun for me. Not as Drive could be tough, like to get through by the end. You're like some of the violence in it and stuff like that. So I had to go with that.
Baby Driver's hands down one of my favorite movies. I remember buying the soundtrack off of iTunes at the time, and I just fell in love with the soundtrack before I even seen the movie.
Yeah.
And there's just something special about Baby Driver, especially the car scenes and stuff like that too. But yeah, that opening scene also sets the tone. You also introduced a baby for the very first time, and he's doing
Right.
that bank heist.
Hmm.
And I love how he's also mouthing the words, the lyrics, and stuff like that too. And
Yeah.
then, yeah,
Yep. He's cool and collected. He's laser focused. You know what I mean? He's just yeah. It sets him up really well.
I really love bank heist movies, and that's to me is like the best heist movie that you can think of, aside from maybe from Ocean's 11
Right.
or maybe Transporter. Whenever the very
Yeah.
first Transporter came out, with Jason
Yeah.
Statham.
Yep.
But yeah, Baby Drivers definitely sticks with you, and it's one of my favorites. Tequila. I remember when the song Tequila came on with Jamie Foxx,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. I really love that. John Bernthal does a fantastic job in it. John Hamm. Come on, you have a great
That
cast.
that cast is amazing, and the cast kind of plays well. Maybe Jamie Foxx not as much, but like John Hamm is totally different. It's like right after Mad Men, I want to say,
Yeah,
maybe like a year or so. So he's not playing like the slick back, totally together, type of person. The type of personality. He's got a different personality. Everybody kind of plays. Uh, well, Kevin Spacey kind of plays that. He has that same quirk when he's evil. I mean, he's great at it,
right.
obviously, but yeah,
Exactly.
but it is a great cast. And uh, to who's the star of that? Why can't I think of his name?
I know. You know what? I forgot the name of the actor. Hold on. But Baby Driver.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Hold on.
That's
I got
that's
you.
poor. I should have that. I should have that right in
It's
front of me.
Ansel Elgort.
Yeah,
Elgort.
yeah, and he kind of steals a lot of the scenes from those actors,
He
which
really
which
does.
says
For him to be
something.
the main star, yeah.
Which really says something. So that was one of my things, and I just love the movie. So I was like, screw it, I'm putting it on.
I gotcha. So number 4, I was playing around with this. I was like, okay, I want The Departed. Then I'm like, no, I don't want The Departed.
The Departed, I like that.
Yeah, The Departed. Yeah, my Boston accent is coming out a little bit when I say Departed. But then I was like, no, I want to do Back to the Future. Then after that, like, no, I don't want to do Back to the Future. So I
Hmm.
decided to go with a gangster movie. I decided to go with Goodfellas.
I knew that was coming. I had that on the list too, and I took it off.
Because here's the thing, it starts off like a horror movie if you think about it,
It's
because it's
good.
pitch black and you hear something, you're not sure what it is or anything like that. It sounds like Tommy may have run over something or something like that. The guys are in the back. You have De Niro in the back. You have Tommy in the passenger side. That's right. Ray is actually um Henry is actually driving the car, and all of a sudden they open the trunk. I'm like, oh shit, it's Phil, but you don't know that's Phil. You just know that's he. They just got done killing somebody, and so next thing you know, I like how the red light is just flashing on Henry, and because now he has to go get the shovels out of the trunk with this dead body, and I like how it goes back to all my life. I always wanted to be a gangster,
Yep,
and it just
that's
it
the
has that
line.
still frame. Yeah,
That's the line. Yeah, all my life, and I will always remember that. And I've seen Goodfellas, like, let's face it, 100 times at least, because
Same here.
whenever
I
it's
actually own
on,
it on
it's
DVD.
yeah, and then if it's on TV, it's like, I gotta watch this from wherever it is. You know what I mean? It's just it's one of those movies I can watch it over and over. The
Same here.
Departed is a
Even
great movie too, though.
yeah, The Departed is really good. The thing that I really loved about The Departed, and this might be just like an honorable mention a little bit, but the thing that I love about The Departed was the fact the intro does not start until like 20 minutes in before they roll the
Mhm.
credits
Yeah,
because it sets the tone for the characters. And I love that cold opening for it because I never seen that before in a
mhm.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never s yeah, you're right, yeah, I don't have much else to add, but yes, that
Right.
is a great opening.
Because think of it like this: you had Leonardo DiCaprio having his life.
Right,
Well, first it starts off with Matt Damon and his life as a kid, getting and meeting Frank Costello for the first time, and then it goes
right,
into his adulthood, and he's graduating the academy. While that's happening, you have DiCaprio who has his family that's mafioso kind of family, kind of corrupted, and he's going in to want to be a statey, and he goes in and does that, and it's this cat and mouse game through the whole entire thing. But he goes to prison to act like he's to go undercover as one of Costello's people later on. And I like how we're introduced to these two different worlds at the same time. While DiCaprio is facing jail time and doing all this stuff for undercover work, we have Damon's character who has the life, who the life that DiCaprio wanted, but Quentin and and the well, Quentin and the other guy was like, look, you're not going to be a statey. You're just not going to do it. You're going to be paid as a cop, but you're not going to be a cop. You're going to oppose to be undercover, but you're still a cop. But
yep,
I definitely liked it.
yeah. No, that's definitely that's a good one too.
What do you have for your number three then?
So number 3, I went with The Dark Knight, partly because I obviously The Dark Knight's a weird movie for me because honestly, I remember the first time I saw it, I liked it, I didn't love it, and then as it went on, I really loved it. But I was always a big Batman guy as a kid.
Mhm.
Even like from the first from Keaton and all that stuff in the comics. I was a big comic book kid.
Me too. Still am.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things though, Nolan did such a good job of grounding these movies. I mean, there's spectacle in them. A lot of that stuff that the Joker pulls off would be really tough, but I think I think the way his character operates with that sense of anarchy and not
Mhm.
caring, he probably could pull a lot of stuff off that you wouldn't believe. There's people who can do that and they have that type of recklessness to them. So I like that opening scene. The music is tense. Um, I think it sets everybody up really good. Obviously, it's all the clown masks and stuff like that, but it's like an overcomplicated um
Nice job.
heist job. But he does it does a good job of setting him up. Like he is reckless, but like he's like organized chaos, but it sets up him as a polar opposite to Batman, which is why later on in the movie, it's such a great scene, obviously the interrogation scene, because you realize Batman only has fear, right? I mean, he's obviously very
Right.
smart, but he uses fear against criminals and he doesn't he misjudges criminals, and Alfred does tell him that, like, maybe you're misjudging him, and not in that type of words, but that scene where he's just punching him at the end, and the Joker's like, "You have nothing. You have nothing." And you could see the fear,
Mhm.
even though he's got the mask. But it sets it up right away, like that he's chaotic, rebellious. Um, he doesn't care about human life, but he's smart on top of that.
Right.
And
Because right. Like you said though, with that bank heist job that you mentioned too, is like it's to show how smart he is at planning stuff out and then not leaving anyone behind for the money at all and letting him take it all. And then the way he lines up in the bus line in the school bus line was perfect. Just planted around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just as the buses are pulling in, was genius on his level of how he ended up committing that crime. And then I love the grapple shot of the clowns going down to the buildings and stuff like that. It definitely sets the tone. And I love Nolan's vision of the first two films for the Batman
Yeah.
franchise at that time.
Yeah.
Of course, I love '89 Batman too, but but this one I really liked a little bit of the realism that he used with it as well.
Yeah. 89 Batman's just it's like a comic book though. Right. I mean, the scenes, the way, the colors, the Acme,
Right,
even that first scene, which I looked at, I thought about it, because you get the iconic "I'm Batman"
right.
and stuff. Just the way everything's set up. But that's Tim Burton, right? I mean, everything's like
Spectacle,
a
honestly.
gross burlesque of like some, even if you look at Edward Scissorhands, it's like a it's like a nightmare version of suburbia, and
Mhm.
he was kind of perfect to capture that version of Gotham, where I think Nolan's one of the few who could pull off that really gritty, down to earth type of superhero movie, because those can act almost as, if it isn't Batman, they would still work, like just some guy who's a vigilante.
Right, and also too, you actually bring out a good point though too, especially whenever Alfred's like, "Look, some men just want to see the world burn,"
Yeah, that's the line.
and he didn't realize that up until he's in that interrogation room. And I like how he slams Joker's head on the table. He goes, "You see, you make things kind of blurry."
Yeah, never start with the head.
Never start with the head.
It's fuzzy, and yeah, I mean, that's what that to me is like actually one of the great scenes in movies too. It's just because it's the only way to get them together in that scene, properly to talk.
Right.
And he just, Batman's used to just owning everybody with his brute strength and force, and he had to figure out a way when he doesn't have that.
Exactly. So I decided to go with Jaws for my number three
I was close, yeah.
because Jaws is hands down one of my favorite movies of all time, aside from The Crow, Batman, and stuff like that, and The Godfather. Jaws is hands down one of my favorite movies. I remember going to the projects across the street from my aunt in Boston. And I
Mhm.
would actually go over to our cousin's house. I would always do this every summer, I swear. I would go on ahead, grab the Jaws movie on VHS, and then go back over to my aunt's house and watch Jaws. And
Jaws is
yeah,
like it still holds up. It
yeah,
holds up so well. Like, I watched it 2 or 3 years ago with my daughter, because she was old enough and she was interested, and I was like, I get scared sometimes when I go back to watch these movies, like, I'm almost like, I don't wanna watch it because it's gonna ruin whatever I thought it was,
right.
and
And
Jaws
there's
was one of
some
those movies that didn't do that.
exactly, man. Like the very first scene that you see is that girl going out into the ocean. She's swimming. You don't know what's on. It's dark out. Everybody's on the other side of the beach and everything, partying and stuff like that. But she goes on ahead and swims out, and she's on the buoy. And you notice that something is in the water with her, but you don't know what it is. It's that suspense of like I thought I was alone, but I'm not alone here. And then you see her hurrying up, going over to where the buoy is, and then all of a sudden she gets dragged down to the water. So then you're like, okay, what the hell is going on here? You know what I mean? If they didn't put Jaws on the poster to show that this is a shark movie, you wouldn't have known what it was about. You'd be like, okay, what the hell happened? What's going on here?
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I really liked about it was the fact of the slow pacing of it. That thing, that mysterious thing in the dark that could get you when you actually feel safe at because you're swimming and you're at nighttime and no one's and you feel safe.
I think that comes from a time where this the lack of special effects quality really helped these movies, right? Like, because to develop the sense of fear and tension that they needed. They didn't have like the cheap trick of just, like a realistic looking shark, or if they did, they had to take it at certain angles. It just it's such, that's a scary movie. Like that scene that you're talking about is actually frightening to me. Like I feel that tension in the water. I feel my legs in the water
Right.
and
That's
something's going to pass me, or I'm like something's going on, but I feel it when I watch that scene.
exactly. And I know it's spooky season, so I figured put a horror movie on here.
Yeah.
And I think Jaws is actually the perfect horror movie. I actually bought this on 4K. They had like the steel book, the vault of the Jaws for the steel book, and I ended up getting that because I'm a huge Jaws fan. But the watching it in 4K is definitely something I definitely recommend people to do whenever they have a chance.
Yeah, you know what I didn't realize about that movie, until not too long ago, that it was PG,
Mhm.
and that Spielberg kinda helped create the PG-13 rating system because of that. Because there used to just be PG, not because of Jaws, but Jaws is one of the movies that
Right.
was like,
But just because of the content in it, though.
right, and but that happened too with, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was PG, and they wanted to make it R, and, Gremlins was another one that was PG, and then it's
Right.
like, you see the
I
blender scene, you're like, "What?
how did they get it how did that
What?"
get in there as a
Can I
PG movie?
can I tell you, I bought that for my son when he was, like, 4 or 5, and my wife goes, "Is this an appropriate movie for him?" I go, "You know, I wouldn't have thought so, but it's PG. It has to be fine." We're watching it. It's just like the guy's getting in the microwave.
Right, and then you see all these eggs all over the place
Yeah,
too,
she's
this
giving me
gooey
this
eggs.
look like I'm like, "It's PG, I didn't know."
Hey, it's PG. It's not like it's rated R. There's no boobs
Yeah.
or anything like that, so I think that will be good here.
I think he
I'm like
didn't he have something to do with that though? Did he produce
yeah,
Gremlins?
he produced it because
Yeah.
if you don't remember, there is like some small callbacks
Yeah.
and everything too in the Goonies.
Right. Right,
But
you're
not
right. I forgot about
because at the sheriff's office, he goes, "Oh, that reminds me of the time when you thought you saw some gremlins or running around town or something like that to that effect." But yeah,
Yeah.
he did produce it.
Yeah, so he was instrumental in the PG-13 rating because
Right.
he said it
And
was kinda ridiculous that, well, it was kind of a killer if it went to R because, it's not it's not bad enough where somebody, 15, 16 can't see this thing. So that was that's how they came together with that. But I always thought that was an interesting story because there's some movies I watched back then that I didn't realize. I'm like, "Oh, I thought this was worse," and then I watch it and I'm like, "Why is this PG?"
right, because like I ended up watching like Back to School, Ronnie
Oh,
Dangerfield,
yeah.
and I'm like, there's boobs in this thing, and it's like I don't know if it was supposed to rated R or not, but my mom allowed me to watch it, and then
Mhm.
she thought it was a good idea to rent Child's Play at age 5 for me, and traumatized me because she saw the doll on the
Child's
front of
Play,
the
yeah.
VHS tape cover. I'm like,
Oh,
thank you
yeah.
for the traumatization. I do appreciate that. But yeah.
Yeah.
For your number two, what would you have to go with?
Alright, so this is kind of an icon one and also a childhood thing and a nostalgia pick, but I think it fits. I chose Star Wars Episode 4. I know, like, that's probably, like, a pick a lot of people would have had, but here's the thing, so I grew up I was a huge Star Wars nerd. I still watch it, not as religiously as I used to or whatever, where I can name, like, I used to be able to name, like, off planets and stuff like that. Now I'm not as into it, um but that scene, I think just, obviously for the time, 1977, I didn't see it in the movies because I wasn't alive, but I can understand at the time, like, watching first of all, you have the scroll. The scroll's iconic in each of those movies, but, but then you have the scene where, obviously, you have the small, ship that has the plans, and then you just have the ship that never ends come on screen. And I think that changed movies a lot, especially at 77. Remember, the 70s were a time of like really gritty, sometimes ugly films, right? I mean, there's a lot of
Right, because we just mentioned Jaws, which was
right,
1975 movie. You also had Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
right. It's Raging Bull and all those movies, a lot of
That was
um
1980 for Raging Bull.
oh, come on, man. I just missed that. Um but the 1970s, which I think it reflects a lot of the social problems in America and stuff like that, like
Mhm.
um just a really, gritty, everything was kind of dark as far as the way the movies were filmed. I mean, and then the content obviously was, and there's some great stuff out in the 70s. Obviously, I'm not saying that.
Right. Like Halloween, you had the very first
Oh,
Halloween
I
that came
love the
out.
first Halloween. That's like that's probably my favorite horror movie. I'm not a big horror guy, but loved Halloween. Um,
There's also Taxi Driver in the 1970s,
Taxi
Rocky Horror
Driver.
Picture. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Rocky Horror Picture Show. Yeah, there's a lot of them, but that stands out. I think that changed the culture, and then you'll see like everybody starts trying to make sci-fi special effects movies, and not maybe as popular as they did it and as well as they did it, but it opened a door to something. So I chose it, and obviously for I had the it's a big part of my growing up, and yeah, I just think you know it's got the I almost forgot to mention, it's got the what's it called? The music too. The
Oh,
score.
yeah, the score
Um,
for John Williams.
John Williams. Thank you. That's what I was trying to get to. Yeah, no, John Williams score, and that's iconic. How many movies have we seen that use it? Even the new Marvel movies and all these type of movies. The score is they have these big, almost aberratic type of scenes. Um, that swell and build to something, but it's the music that sets that. I mean, that movie just is so different for its time. It's not my favorite one. Empire will always be my favorite, and just because I always love the father son dynamic in Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi for me is my,
That's your
my
favorite.
yeah. Return of the Jedi is one of my favorite ones. Now,
That's yeah.
Yeah, Kib is actually Empire Strikes Back all day long.
I'm
I
I'm
know that.
Empire too. I think that's more because I think that's the best paced movie out of all of them. I think from start to finish, the pacing is really good in that movie, which sounds silly, but sometimes every once in a while you see these movies and they have like a perfect flow to them, and I think that's that one. And obviously, I was alive for the reveal, but I think I was like 6 months old, so it doesn't really count. But that iconic reveal is huge. So I always go with that one, and I always feel kind of bad for the kids and stuff because to them they grow up with the prequels, and it's
Right.
like, yeah, we already knew that was and
That was
who
set up.
Anakin was. You know what I mean? But I'm like, dude, that's why you can't appreciate it though. You'll never be able to.
Right.
So
And here's the thing. I grew up with the originals as well.
mhm,
And so I guess you would actually have to say maybe the prequels would be my generation of Star Wars
yeah,
in a sense, because I was in 7th grade when that came out. But at the
right,
same time, it's not because I grew up with the original OG Star Wars. So
yeah.
I'd be like, okay, this is not as good as it's kind of having like diet soda in a sense. Like, okay, I like it, but it doesn't have any flavor, but I'll take it. You know what I
Well,
mean?
so that's one of those things that's weird, right? So yeah, I know what you mean because there's a whole group that grow up right between the two of them. It's kind of like
Mhm.
calling somebody a Zennial when they're Gen Z or a millennial and you don't know where to place them. You're kind
Right.
of like in that middle. So
Right.
you
Either
kind
I'm
of
a Gen
appreciate
X
it.
or I'm a millennial because I'm right there because I was in
Yeah,
85. So it's
right,
like,
right, right. So it's, it's one of those things. But I also get, it's funny though, every time a new set comes out, like obviously the sequel trilogy. then all of a sudden everybody like loved the prequels. They're like, well, they were good stories,
It
which
wasn't as
which
good
they
bad
were,
as I
but
thought it was.
yeah,
Right.
going back,
Right. For me,
so
I love the pod racing for the Phantom Menace, and I also like the Darth Maul scene. That's like the only two things
so
I liked.
I will defend Phantom Menace as a part of it is, it's very kiddish. But I always say, I'm like, it has Liam Neeson, who I thought was excellent in that, and it has Darth Maul, and it has one of the better lightsaber fights. I mean,
Mhm.
I just don't like it as much because the emotional attachment for me is to Vader and Luke,
Right.
right? But if somebody tells me that's a better fight scene, I'm like, yeah, I gotta say it probably is, right? So I do think the Phantom Menace. The problem I have with those movies is they feel like a really good first draft of something. Like he just
It
needed to
never
hand
happened.
that hand off, and then it would have been fine. Like they would have been good movies, fleshed out, but didn't happen.
So I decided to go with a movie that I would say maybe the early 2000s. This movie came out, and it was ahead of its time. But it's now well, 1999 is where I'm going with it. Even though I already talked
Oh,
about another 1999 movie with Star of Echoes with Kevin Bacon,
that's a
but
great movie, by the way.
it
I'm
is.
listening to that tomorrow, but
Thank
when
you.
I saw that, I was like, oh my god, I
Yeah,
love that
that was
movie.
a lot to cram into for an hour, but it was great to talk about.
Before I let you go, I have to say though, that movie suffered because it came out the same exact time, pretty much within months of another very similar movie, but that similar movie got the all the attention because of
Which
its
is my
ending,
pick, right? Which is my
right?
pick, The Matrix,
Okay.
Trinity's Escape.
Yeah. Um, I was really close. I decided to not pick it, but I have you know, consideration ones, and that was one of them. I mean, that really is an iconic opener.
Right, because think of it like this, okay? I ended up doing all the reviews for all the Matrix movie leading up to the new Matrix movies before. Same thing I did with all the Batman movies. I reviewed every single Batman movie leading up to the Batman. Um, but you know, the thing that I loved and appreciate with the first one is the fact that you can watch this movie 7 times and still not understand a damn thing that's happening in this movie until
Yeah.
later on it just clicks. But my favorite thing is with Trinity, you see her do all this kick off the wall and roundhouse kick to the police officer. Then she's running down this hall. Then she goes to the telephone booth. Then you see Agent Smith go try to run her over, and she disappears. And you're like, "What the hell happened?" And then it wakes up with Neo. Um, but yeah, that's our introduction to Neo, our hero, and stuff like that. But I just thought the introduction of laying down the groundwork for the very first Matrix movie was really good, compelling. The special effects were ahead of its time. Everybody was trying to be like the Matrix at that time. For crying
Yeah.
out loud, you even had Dracula 2000 trying to be like the Matrix.
Yeah.
And even the
Um,
one was trying to be like the Matrix.
yeah. So I was gonna say very similar to not similar, obviously, in style, but similar in effect to what the original Star Wars did. It changed something in movies. It changed special effects forever. Once they could do that, it got overused, let's face it, at some point by 2005. I was like, all right, can we stop with the stop motion and all that kind of stuff? Stop and then
Right.
spin around. But like watching that movie, it was ridiculous. But that's a great opener. And then, that's one of those weird iconic films where you could watch it for the cerebral, right? You could sit there and try to think about all the philosophical themes going on, or you could just sit there and watch it for the action, right? Like what's going on. That's I think one of the great testaments of that movie is it toes a line between depending on what mood you're in, you could care or not care
Right. You can
about.
have it on for background noise and everything and just go to sleep and
Right.
not even care about anything that's going
Yeah.
on in the movie.
And that's definitely a tone setter. I mean, Yeah, I mean, that's a great pick. Was that number 1?
No, that was my number 2.
Okay,
That
I
was
just wanna make
brought back
sure. I
over.
was like, "Did we?" Okay.
No. But you know what's funny though is I remember joking around with this on the episode, right? I was like, I wonder how many times that Lauren Fishburne's character had to tell Trinity that she's gonna meet the one and it happens to be the wrong one.
Yeah.
And she has to go through the whole entire deal of, okay, Trinity, I can't you're gonna meet the one. You're gonna fall in love with him. That's what you said about the one, before that
Right.
one. So which one is it? And then every single one of them dies. And then
Yeah.
finally it's Neo. Neo, you're the one. You're the one who's gonna fall in love with Trinity. You're gonna be the one to do this.
Yeah.
So I was like just having some fun with it. I'm like, I wonder how many people that he actually had to meet up on the streets. Like, you're the one.
I
Red
never
pill
thought
or blue
about
pill.
that. Right? I never really thought about, yeah, how many people is just sitting there? That's
Right?
funny. That's funny.
Um, could you just imagine the kung fu thing was like, okay, I want you to run off this building, and all of a sudden they just die. I'm like, well, I guess he's not the one. But anyways, what's your speaking of the one? What is your number one?
Alright, so I'm gonna set up, well, first, I wanna ask you a quick question because I had a consideration here, and I didn't take it because I don't know if I consider it the
Okay.
opening scene. I was thinking of the Omaha Beach invasion or D-Day and Saving Private Ryan. But is that actually the opening scene, or is him in the cemetery, or is it all one?
I feel like you can have a separation with that
Right,
because of the
that's
fact
what I thought.
because to be honest with you, think of it as like a prologue, right? The prologue
Mhm.
is him in the cemetery. Chapter one begins with him on Normandy.
Right.
So I would say that would start the whole entire movie.
The Normandy invasion you're talking
Yep.
about, like a
Yep.
prologue? Alright, so it could have been in there, in the top
So
5
yeah, I
anyways,
think that counts. I think that counts
but
as the start of the film.
okay. I mean, it might have cracked the top 5. It wouldn't have been my number 1, but it is one of those things where that's a great movie, um, and one that scene, I don't know why I don't wanna get too deep into this because it's not even on my top 5, but
It's
that
okay.
scene is very, very, it's so compelling, it's so graphic, like, by the time they open up the boats to run out and you see, like, 10 people get their heads blown off, like, I'm in World War II, I'm at Normandy, I'm sitting there thinking, like, "Am I hiding and pretending I'm dead? What am I doing at this point?" Like, it's scary, like, and he's very anti-war, and I think he kinda made that movie to kinda show it, if I remember correctly, Spielberg, but I could
It shows the
see.
complexity of war and what
Right,
war can do to somebody.
right.
And I remember watching that in world history class, right?
Mhm.
And our teacher's like, "Look, this is rated R. I want you guys to sign off on the paperwork and everything for your parents. Make sure that your parents get permission to watch this movie." So we watched it, and it sets the tone for what we're getting in store for. And like you said, we want to hide from the bullets. It has the adrenaline going because remember, there is one part where the one of the guys is actually trying to control his hands from being jittery and everything too.
Right,
And so, yeah, it has that complexity of war, what the cause and effect of war can do to somebody. And also, people can die in war while other people are funding the war and
right.
stuff.
Yeah. So that for me would be an honorable mention. I had a couple other ones, but, so number 1, I went with the Tarantino film,
Okay.
but I don't know if it's the one everybody expects. I went back and forth. You know, um, Obviously everybody thinks about, I think Tarantino maybe with Pulp Fiction and the diner scene which is an amazing opening. And obviously that movie creates almost like a genre in itself that
Right.
everybody tried to mimic the rest of the 90s. I mean, that movie does change stylistically movies in the 90s, dialogue, that mid-budget indie, almost indie type of feel that everybody got away with up until, for like 10 years. But I actually went with Inglorious Bastards.
Oh, I know what
Um,
you're going with.
because the scene's like 10 minutes long, the opener. Um, and I think I'll take his word about it, even though he was talking about another scene, which is like ridiculous, that bar scene. But he talks about creating tension and he says you have to pull the band-aid. I mean, I'm sorry, the rubber band. You're pulling a rubber band when you write these scenes, and you're trying to get just enough tension, but you don't want the band to snap. You don't want it to break. And that's one of those scenes. I mean, y- there's just so much to that scene. I mean, it sets everything up. It's a peaceful hillside in France. It's tranquil. It's small dairy farm, which really contrasts nicely to what was probably going on in the cities at that point and what's about
Right.
to come. You have a French farmer, dairy farmer there, and then Hans Landa comes there, played by Christoph
Stuff.
Waltz, and I mean he creates a character that is, he's so gentlemanly when he comes to the scene in each scene, and he's so scary, and he does it there, like, and that's the setup. Like, he's such a gentleman when he comes there.
Hmm.
And he's speaking French to the farmer, and he just takes so long. He just sets it up so well. And then eventually, he's menacing. He's polite, but he's menacing, is like how I would call it. And when he gets to the point where he's like, "Do you speak English?" Like trying to find a middle ground, and the guy does, something's up because it's just his tone changed. That's where the menacing part comes in. And
Right.
just that, like, are there there's enemies of the state under the floorboards? Point them out for me. And then it's just like, it's on from there. But he has like it's crazy. It's like he enjoys the hunt, and he's got like a subtle, call it, like a subtle dominance in his personality.
Most
That's
definitely.
scary. He's menacing. He's scary, but he's so gentle about it when he's doing it,
Right. Because
you
he's
know?
just trying to ease that person, ease the tension a little bit. And
Mhm.
then he adds the tension at the same time.
Yeah.
And I know I talked about this on best opening scenes ever.
Mhm.
But well, no, not best opening, but best scenes ever. Top 5 best scenes ever is what I did. And I talked about the scene. But yeah, he does a fantastic job of just being that character of just getting on under that person's skin
Yeah.
and making him do what he wants him to do, which is rat out the people from underneath the floorboards.
Yeah.
And it just sets the tone for what we're gonna be in store for later
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. He's just, it's so three-dimensional, right? So a lot of villains in a lot of times, like, the Nazis are portrayed in a certain light, right? They're just these evil, um, not too complex type of characters. And he's got a lot of complexity. I mean, I think he's purely evil in the end. Like, the only time I ever see him totally lose it is when he chokes out the actress in that one
Right.
scene. And that's the only time I see him like really lose his cool, if I remember correctly about it. Or, maybe when Brad Pitt shoots the end, shoots his friend and is about to do his thing. But it's just, it's set he's set up for the whole movie, and he steals the whole movie from at least Brad Pitt and whoever else is in it.
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. Um, so let's see here. My number 1, I've actually got an old movie. Well, not an old movie, but this is a movie that changed the superhero genre. This is the film that basically made them forget about Batman and Robin and restored us back into the way superhero films should be, and that is Blade. Because
That is an interesting pick, and I thought about Blade.
let me tell you why I picked it. Not just because the opening scene, but also because of spooky season. But also, if you think about it like this, okay, at that time, the studios didn't want to take their chances on superhero movies anymore at that time. So therefore, they went on ahead. They decided to make Blade. They don't even mention the fact that he's even a comic book character. All you know, he's a
Never.
vampire. He's a daywalker. That's all you know. And then you realize you had the most successful comic book movie ever. And what they did was fantastic with it because of the fact now the studios are like, okay, you know what? People want to see comic book movies, but they want to be done in the right way and on the way that they did it before with Joe Schumacher or anything. So that's what, but yeah, that's why Blade is such an important movie is because of the fact if it wasn't for Blade, we wouldn't have the Dark Knight. We wouldn't have the MCU. We wouldn't have all this right now. We wouldn't even have Deadpool at this point either if it wasn't for Blade.
No, I agree with you. In fact, I didn't realize it was a comic book because I didn't really read Blade when I was a kid. You know, I was
Right,
really into like X-Men and all that stuff.
right.
Um, but it like never dawned on me when it came out. And you're right, they stayed away from that for forever. What year did that come out?
I want to say 98.
98. Okay, August 21st, 98.
Yep.
And that's Goyer who would go on to write the Nolan trilogy or was a big part of the I want to say he was a yeah, I think he was a big part of that. He wrote them, co-wrote them anyway. But yeah, that's a I mean, that's a fantastic opening scene that really
Yeah,
sets
that
the whole
bloodbath
thing up.
scene, that
Yeah.
rave, like every single time when that rave song comes on, my mind automatically goes to Blade every single time. That whole
Yeah.
entire the girl bringing the guy over to this underground club, and you see the sprinkler system go off. It's once Blade winds up doing his shooting and stuff like that, and sprinklers filled with blood. Then you also have Blade with the blade that he throws and catches it. The fight scene in the very beginning is rock and roll, is drug, sex, and rock and roll to me
Yeah.
because of how great it is. And the fight sequences, like fight choreography, is fantastic in it. You cannot go wrong with this movie at all. Matter of fact, it's now on 4K, and I want to pick it up now.
That's one of those movies. See, that's a time though. So the 90s is like one of those it's by the late 90s too, where they did take a chance on like I mean the 90s is just a crazy run in the middle of it. Um that they might not have done later. I mean, yes, I think you're right. They obviously didn't say anything about it being a comic book movie, which is funny because now everything's stamped with that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know if it'd be interesting because obviously Marvel's trying to incorporate that and it was nice to see him get a little bit of a send off in the Deadpool Wolverine movie.
Right. But I
That
also
was
like how Wesley Snipes goes, there's only been one blade, and there always
yeah.
will be only one blade. It's like he put a curse on the film itself and be like, you know what? This is actually Wesley's movie. But I do have, in case anybody from Marvel or Disney wants to reach out to me, I have an idea on how you should do this reboot. Have Wesley as Wessler training the new Blade. That way you can still have Wesley in there as a Wessler character, giving the reins over to somebody else
Yeah, I mean, as long
and
as you
do
have the
it that way.
multiverse, you might as well use it, right? You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like,
Which I'm tired of the multiverse thing, but for this kind of
yeah,
setup, you know what I mean. But yeah,
I thought it would be better too. I thought the setups would be much better. And it started off well. Besides, like Black Widow was weird because that was the start of that phase, and then I was like, "Why? What was the point of this?" I thought it would tie into something, but it was like, "Oh,
no, it was just his own separate movie that didn't tie into anything.
it was like, oh, we forgot. We should have probably made a movie for Black Widow, so let's just
Even
do
though she
that now."
died.
Yeah, that. So I was like, "Oh, cool. This will tie into something that kicks this thing off." By the end, I was really disappointed. But you know, they had Spider-Man and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that's what kicked it off was the last Spider-Man movie with the
Yeah,
multiverse and stuff.
yeah,
But still, after that, the biggest mistake was the fact that number one, they got rid of Tony Stark. That was their home
Yeah,
run and lightning in the bottle. Then now I'm hearing now get this. There's actually now this is a little separate thing I'm going to talk about real quick, and we'll end it. But I also found out too that this is actually like Marvel's doing their greatest hits album because now they want to go ahead and get Thanos back again.
I read something about that.
Yeah, this is a rumor right now, and then they also have RDJ, of course, returning as Doom
It's
in
gonna be so
this.
weird.
It is going to be weird, but if they can actually make him a villain and make it work, it could work. But here's the thing: putting Thanos back in this again, all they're in desperate need of help right now, and they know that
Yeah,
from a studio standpoint, is like, okay, we're struggling here,
right.
so let's do what worked before. Let's get RDJ back. Let's go on ahead and get Thanos back again because he was the big bad in the last one. And let's see what the fuck happens.
Well,
And that's what it
yeah.
is. It's just their greatest hits. It's like they're trying to remaster their greatest hits album.
Well, part of the problem with that is that they had this run.
Hmm.
Listen, they did something nobody else could do, right? They serialized their movies. They had 23 movies that all tied together, and most of them were really good. Most of them, there was a few that fell flat, but even those were like forgivable in some way, like Thor: The Dark World or whatever. I mean, it didn't
Yeah,
kill.
Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah,
Well, but that
and
was like afterwards. I mean, that
yeah,
again, that was a big one that they flopped on because people might have looked more fondly going forward if Thor: The Dark World, I mean, I'm sorry, Thor: Love and Thunder was actually good. I mean, that was just weird. It was like what like it was like they tried to do the last movie and it just didn't work on any level. But
it felt like an SNL. Like Thor
yeah.
was. You know what it reminds me of? Okay, you remember what's that? It's an old '80s movie that takes place in high school and in Best Times at Richmond High.
Oh, Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah, Best Times
Yeah.
at Richmond High. The main character, Begoli. That's basically what Thor
Yeah.
was that whole entire time was Begoli.
Yeah. I actually thought they could have done something cool like an Asgardians of the Galaxy movie because they worked really well together
Right. But
in the Infinity. No, I'm sorry, were they? Yeah, Infinity War and then
or
Endgame. So, yeah, I thought that would have been interesting. But listen, they had a really good run of movies. I mean, you can't keep it
no,
going forever.
they had almost a decade of nothing but home runs.
I mean, they were critically doing very well, and not even just financially. I mean, the critics every time they put out a movie were like, "Oh, this is great." You know what I mean? It was like
Exactly.
it was ridiculous. It was a ridiculous run, and yeah, you just sometimes you have a good thing, and I don't know. I know studios are never gonna let it end, but it almost felt like it should have just ended where they had it.
Right. So
So
that's gonna be it as far as our top five best opening scenes in a movie goes. But Jay, man, I appreciate you being on the
yeah,
show and stuff. I mean, seriously, this has been great. We've been trying to do a collab for a while, ever since Goodwill
yeah.
Hunting, and it's just good that we actually found some groundwork to be able to do something.
Yeah,
So
I love this, man. It's been this was a lot of fun. This is the most fun I've had on a podcast in a long time.
thank you.
Um, so yeah, this is great. Yeah, man, you got to come on my show. I still want to do something on
For
99
sure.
before the year's out because I looked all of a sudden. I was like, oh man, that's like 25 years ago. It's perfect timing to do
But you
that.
know,
So
but you know what though? We have to do another review again, so that way we can do the strip away the nostalgia, do the nostalgia thing
yeah,
like I do now, because I love doing that. Because we talked about how movies might not have aged well, so I think it's actually perfect to do something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. I think it's
But
great
yeah,
because there's definitely some movies from that year, especially that I'm scared to watch because I'm scared of the nostalgia factor getting ruined.
right. But
So
man, I would love to be on your show, to be honest with
yeah,
you. Just
we'll
let me
make it
know. I'll
happen.
be there.
All right, man. We'll make it happen. Be on.
But do you have anything coming out as far as your show goes, or anything like that? Anything, any kind of shout outs or anything?
Yeah. So the name of my show is the With Jay Burke Show. Easiest way to describe it, it's kind of like a variety show that digs deep into topics. Sometimes they're really serious, sometimes they're lighthearted. I think just because the time of year it is, it's been a little more serious. So this was definitely needed. But I have one coming out soon with Joe C from The Story Of, where we both talk about it's philosophy. Really, it's about existentialism, but it'll be about the meaning of life. But it's more funny. Like it's a lot of fun, that one. And then I got a few others on the docket, and like I said, it's kind of all over the place, but you'll find something you like on it, I think, if you look through the catalog. And like I said, I got to have you on, so we're gonna make that happen.
Okay, sounds great.
All right.
But guys, that's gonna be it as far as this show goes. Go on ahead and check out our Unfiltered Studios family over there. Jay's part of it. We also have that Florida feeling. We also have the Stupid History Minutes, Levy G show. We have Wellness and also Pedestal Support. We have a lot of interesting podcasts and stuff like that too. So go on and check them out. Also, Finding Your Way with the Beep as well. It's also another great podcast as well.
Mhm.
Rossie and I will be doing our not Batman, our Penguin review tomorrow for episode 6 at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time for that one. And I've been also working on Rossie's Clubhouse, which is also part of the Unfiltered Studios family as well. So go in and check out Rossie's podcast. And that's going to be it, guys. I hope everyone has a great and safe night, and we'll catch you guys back on the next one. And thank you again, Jay, for joining me. I do appreciate it as always.
Anytime.
All right. And we are out. Later, guys. Bye.